What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of A Ballad of a Small Player, the new psychological thriller film starring Colin Farrell, out now on Netflix. This film directed by Edward Berger. Of course, Berger, he is one of the hottest, most in-demand film directors we have right now, coming off Conclave just last year, Best Picture nominee. Also coming off previously with Netflix a few years before that, All Quiet on the Western Front, that remake. He has quickly ascended himself into, I think that upper echelon of working directors, and, had his name in the ring for James Bond at one point. He's certainly, a very popular hire. And Berger doing any kind of movie at this point would be pretty notable for film fans, but when he's doing a gambling movie set in Macau starring Colin Farrell, I think that gets a lot of people's attention. Ballad of a Small Player, this is adapted from the 2014 Lawrence Osborne novel of the same name from a Rowan Joffe script, and this premiered back at Telluride earlier this year, out now on Netflix. And it's actually a similar, working crew, the cinematographer, costume, others that he worked with at All Quiet. So it's kind of getting the band back together at Netflix once again. And A Ballad of a Small Player is an enjoyable journey into the world of high-stakes gambling in Macau. As someone who just visited Hong Kong and Macau 2 months ago, I really appreciate seeing a lot of locations and settings that I recognize. Colin Farrell is quite strong as this self-assured, confident, seemingly wealthy gambler who's run into a bad streak but can't seem to quit the high-stakes world and the chase to get it all back and fix his debts and run away from his past. All of that really works, and the film is so gorgeously shot. However, the story definitely is very up and down. We start to jump genre more so than you would have expected as the plot begins to unravel. And the key supporting character in the movie, Dao Ming, played by Hong Kong actress Fala Chen, how you respond to what that character does, I think will inform a lot of how you receive this story at the end. That being said, I did enjoy it for what it is. I do recognize its flaws as the movie moves along, and maybe I'm just biased because I thought it was so cool to see a movie actually shot in Hong Kong, actually shot in Macau. I mean, you can count on one hand the number of movies that have meaningfully done that from the Hollywood point of view in recent years, right? A Netflix movie at that, like this pretty cool. Does it bring you back to the Daniel Craig, James Bond Macau gambling scene? Yes. Is it really like that? No. And I think that's a big part of the movie is it doesn't really come across as like a true casino movie, like a true gambling movie, right? Like it's not a heist movie. It's not really like a poker movie. He's playing Baccarat the whole time. And I think this is a movie that definitely will get people more interested in Baccarat. It's not the most mainstream to the casual game, but obviously a huge, huge game of casinos. And I think those scenes are cool, but really the movie's not really about that. It's more focused on learning about Doyle, Farrell's character, and how he dresses himself up, and he's so confident and self-assured, but really he's a phony. He's a fraud. He's made up his identity. And we learn about his backstory and how he's out on the lam and, running from crimes he's committed, money he's stolen. And we encounter Tilda Swinton's character, who's actually a private investigator hired to get the money back or, bring him to justice, call the police on him. The movie moves forward, though, when we meet Dao Ming, played by Fala Chen. And Dao Ming is this employee at a not super famous and high, falutin casino. After Doyle's run out of not the Venetian, but something similar. I think we see the Venetian at one point. There's a scene in there in the food court, which I recognized. But he's run out and he's suggested from like some, employee at the casino to try his hand at, one of the lower rent casinos that would still lend him credit because he's literally just about out of cash. He's onto his last bankroll. That's where he meets Dao Ming. And they kind of come across as kindred spirits once they get to know each other. And, it kind of progresses their relationship. And I think it's a movie that, like, it just can't make up its mind of, like, what it's trying to talk about, right? Because there's desire of excess and the addiction aspect of Doyle's character and his inability to not just flaunt wealth whenever he gets it, right? He's always ordering the fanciest of champagnes, which he later remarks he doesn't even like. These massive, gorging meals, eating so much food, ordering so much. Can't stop all this gambling. We watch things go so right and so wrong for him. Of course, the plot of the movie But then there's also this supernatural aspect of the film, which I think is pretty half-baked. The thought of it popped into my head as soon as we meet Dao Ming, but the spectral presence that her character ends up representing as the movie progresses, I was not necessarily expecting, because I just don't think the groundwork ends up being laid, even though I initially did have that thought. So I think we do progress to the point where, is it the most realistic thing, this like crazy winning streak that he goes on after he finds the money that Dao Ming, sent to her family and had returned. She kind of opens the door to him having that money, but then, the spectral presence thing with whether she's real or not, like, I think that was all okay, but like, I think just for me, like the moment to moment of watching this guy crash out in a literal sense as a high stakes gambler in over his head, as this guy who people are realizing is actually a complete fraud, and then seeing how people treat him again once he gets money again. I liked that stuff in the movie. Obviously, I wouldn't compare this film to Conclave, which just is such a tight and compelling screenplay, really consistent movie. It's more comparable to All Quiet on the Western Front because of that production design gravitas. But I don't know, I was kind of content to go with it. Like when the Adrian character, the other white expat that he's previously known that he goes to for help in the middle of the movie, when he shows back up, also assuming a false European identity like Farrell's Doyle has been doing, that didn't seem the most realistic thing in the world. I also will say, having just visited Macau, when Tilda Swinton takes a photo of him the second time with the actual camera, that actually jumped out to me immediately, because I personally tried to take a photo of the casino floor at the Venetian, 2 months ago, and I was immediately told to delete the photo for the privacy reasons and all of that. So there's no way she would have been able to get away with taking a photo with like an old school, Polaroid camera the way she does. But, I think you just kind of got to go with it. I really had fun with the movie. Like, yes, are there pieces of the story derivative? Does it really have its hand in a lot of different fires right now, trying to nod to various different genres and plot threads? I think so. But for me, the core story and the core Farrell performance, I like this movie a lot more than A Big Bold Beautiful Journeys. This is Colin Farrell's second movie of the year. I think this is a lot more successful, just straight up. That's a movie that I think just story-wise doesn't really work. This film, I think, maybe just biting off a little bit more than it can chew. But for me, the core appeal, I really did enjoy. Despite the early expectation with the movie, of course, Edward Berger's new movie, returning to Netflix, all of that, this is clearly not going to be an Oscar contender given everything else Netflix has in the coffer, in the chamber, ready to fire here. And also, the film just hasn't been well received enough to expect much of an awards campaign here. So I think that's where it ultimately will bear out. I'll be curious, if we get much word of how this movie performs on Netflix as well, given I think it's a very specific, niche type of storytelling. But we'll see. I liked it more than most, seemingly. Let me know, though. What'd you think of A Ballad of a Small Player? What'd you like most about it, or what'd you dislike most about it? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.